Today I'm going to walk you through a case study with clay, which is a recent project I did to show how we reached this result with the brand identity design. This is probably one of my all-time favorite projects that I've worked on, so I'm very excited to cover the process and how we got to the end result that we did. So to get into it, the first step that we took part in was the brand strategy session. Now this session is really important. It's about an hour-long meeting where we're going to cover a bunch of questions that I have outlined about what the business is, what their mission is, their core values, what their audience is and audience persona, as well as competition differentiation and brand personality, and then a few details on the visual design of the branding and their expectations for that. So Clay is a consulting business for nonprofits, and what I really wanted to do with this is kind of work against the traditional expectations with a consulting brand identity of being fairly bland and make it really playful and different from the norm. So after the session, the first step I take is to create a brand strategy guide. So in this, I will outline the core values, mission statement, goals, as well as the audience personas we created, and the details on positioning and brand personality. So from here, this provides us with a lot of information to work off of and a solid structure for what the strategy of this brand is. So after crafting the strategy guide, I'm going to go in and create a mood board presentation as well. So with creating this mood board presentation, I'll go through mostly Pinterest and look for inspiration and start to gather what a direction could look like and piece together elements that work well together. So after some of that research, this is the first mood board that I ended up piecing together. So the typography for this direction was a sans serif, and overall keeping it very clean, but also bringing about some playfulness and brightness through the colors and through subtleties in the type, and the additional elements being some geometric elements like that. So the green and the blue was the pairing for this, keeping it very simple with only a few colors to create a simplistic kind of professional feel, not adding too many colors to it. But overall, this branding created a very simple yet fun and different approach. So that was the first mood board. And in our second mood board, this took on a different color palette, obviously. And this one took on a more feminine approach with a light peachy kind of color, but then paired with a deeper navy blue and another lighter blue. So the peach color paired really well with the navy, and the navy brought about a bit more of a professional, sophisticated look, while the peach was a lighter, more feminine and playful look. So the typography for this direction is similar to the first, with a sans serif that is fairly minimal and clean, but with a heavy weight, which brings on some boldness and likely adding in some subtle customizations into the type. Now this one has a bit more of a stark white compared to the warm white of this first mood board, which has a bit more of a cleaner and professional look compared to the off-white here. So I sent this along with the strategy guide to the client to review, and after a bit she let me know that she wanted to move forward with mood board 1. So I took that and started working on a design direction. So now getting into my workspace, which is all over the place, honestly. I don't have a lot of structure with it, and I kind of work best like that. We'll try to follow along in my process based on this, but it's a little difficult. I start with outlining some fonts. You can see quite a few up here. I started here with trying to merge the letters together a little bit better. That's not a direction I pursued for very long. I didn't end up really liking it. Eventually, I landed on something simple like this. I liked it. I liked the simplicity of it, but I wasn't quite ready to stop there. It just didn't feel right yet. So I went on and I ended up with this guy. I liked the idea of keeping the logo fairly simple, at least for this one. And I did work in here a little person icon, which, you know, isn't totally obvious, but it's a little hidden feature in there. And yeah, just the way that the type was customized was made to be unique to the brand. So this Y and the A are both fully custom, and I was really loving to look at that. So I stopped there with that one. And by the way, I do 2 concepts for the client, so I'll be developing 2 separate directions with this. So from here, I just kind of worked on some different ideas. You know, a lot of my work will go into sketches beforehand. So for clay, I didn't do a ton of sketching. Sometimes I'll do a lot, sometimes I'll do more work on the computer, but you'll see a little bit on there of some different directions, just playing with some ideas. But most of the work was done on the computer. So working off of this logo, I wanted to create a secondary version. So I ended up with this. So this was something I was very excited about because I took the letters in clay and wanted to convert them to abstract shapes to reflect the idea of clay, like the substance of clay. And I also like the idea of showing structure in some way, like how this company is in place to provide structure and support to nonprofits and guide them in that way. So the idea of a very structured design was very appealing and something I wanted to try and experiment with. So what I ended up with was these abstract shapes representing the C, L, A, and Y. And with this, I was able to play with it and eventually expand it into this shape, which takes those letters and just stacks them, and it ended up working really, really well. And I added a border around it and rounded this corner over here. And I feel like it just created a super unique and really cool design. So I was pretty set on using that. And it worked well alongside this primary logo here. Oh, and also as I was working with this brand, the colors that were part of the initial mood board ended up not feeling quite right. It was hard to make it not feel too juvenile, and also make these colors work well against each other with like the green and the blue. They just weren't quite feeling right. So I ended up shifting directions to this, which is much more fitting and feels a lot more mature, with a deep seafoam kind of green against the brighter neon green in a way. So that was the coloring that we ended up going with. Now, based off of this logo that I created, I went forward to create a pattern because I knew that with these abstract shapes there was something in there that would create a really good pattern just with making structure out of all those shapes. So I ended up creating this pattern out of those shapes, which I was very happy with and felt like it would be very versatile for the business. So those were the main elements. I went ahead and created icons as well. And now I was going to work on the second concept I needed to create. So I decided to try and flow the letters together, something like this or like this. And I ended up with this direction, where the A and the Y had this symmetrical flowing line through it, which I liked that. And also at this point I was very excited about the first concept, and I was sure that the client was gonna like that one as well. So sometimes it's really hard to move on to a second concept and brainstorm something new when you know you already have something like really killer. So it was kind of hard to develop something at this point, but I did end up with something I was pretty happy with. So again, I landed on this logo. So to create something alongside that, I wanted to work more with the idea of clay and like maybe the shape of some kind of clay element, like a bowl. So I was working with something like this. And I also like the idea of pieces fitting together and like completing each other in a way, because what we want to represent is them making the business whole and helping them and like fixing it and bringing everything together in unity. So in order to represent that, I ended up with this icon, which I was really excited about as well. So I had two really great concepts here, which I was very happy with. But representing a bowl as well as a C shape, and then adding on this little piece that is completing the rest of that shape. So just fitting together perfectly. So I went ahead and created another pattern as well for this direction, which also took abstract geometric elements like the semicircle from the logo mark, and working with those to create this pattern, which is just very free-flowing and abstract. So I put all of this together in our concept presentation. I created mock-ups as well to show how the branding would be applied in real life. Now, these mock-ups aren't set in stone. It's not something that the client is necessarily receiving, like web design or business card design, but I provide them so that they can see more of what this would look like. And then I also went ahead and selected the typography pairings. Now, after sending this to the client, she wanted to move forward with the first concept. So we did that, and she had a few tweaks. She wanted to add consulting under the primary logo. She loved both patterns, so we ended up using both. I just gave her two patterns with the branding. And she wanted to revisit the icons a little bit to see how to make them have a little more character and fit better with her brand. So we did that. We simply added this subtext below consulting, and we revisited these icons and made them to represent something that was a bit more accurate to our brand. And from here, the branding was approved, and we did have a letterhead design included with this project, so I went ahead and created that as well. But once that was approved, we were ready to send all of the final files and wrap up the project. So this was a very smooth process, and it was a really great result that I was super happy with, and so was the client. And projects like these are just so fun to work on, and a lot of it has to do with the client trusting me and giving me some control with the design, which means so much as a designer. It makes the process very smooth because you're excited about it and you feel like you have some freedom within it. Before sending the client the files, I obviously put together their brand guide, where you can see here. So there's a brief case study on clay, which is a project that was so fun to work on, and I am so excited about the results. I love being able to create something like this for a brand and have a really lasting impact for them. If you guys want to look at my entire process, which has a bit more detail than what's included here, I will link the video here.